We're all spending lots of time at home, watching TV, making sourdough starters, doing some light math. Okay, maybe not so much the light math, but we have a lot more free time on our hands. And you know what they say about idle hands? Here's an idea. Why not keep yourself occupied with some entertainment provided by my friends, your friends, Adam and Eve? I've been a huge fan of them for years. They have thousands of unique product selections from vibrators to sexy toys to lube. Honestly, whatever your little at-home heart desires. As the folks at Adam and Eve say, the best part of staying at home is playing at home. I agree. And I know too, sex toys are expensive, but I'll say this. Take advantage of all of this delicious free time by choosing almost any one item at 50% off. When you buy from Adam and Eve, you'll also get 10 free boredom-busting gifts, including 6 spicy movies, a 3-piece bonus kit, free shipping delivered discreetly right to your door. I love it. Go to adamandeve.com and use the offer code TOWN to bring home unlimited fun. That's ADAMEVE.com and use the offer code TOWN at checkout. A return to danger. I'm Rebecca Lieb.
I'm Jason Horton.
And this is Ghost Town.
Baby, let me take you where the action's hot. Action, action, fun. We can ride the excitement and feel the park rock. Action, action, fun. The action never stops at Action Park.
Looking for a great place for the family this summer? Well, Action Park has 75 of the wildest, wettest family rides in the world just minutes away.
The action never stops at Action Park.
Vernon, New Jersey, 1978, an amusement park opened that became legendary for danger. We're back. Action Park.
Action Park, baby. Oh my God, I have so much. We've grown so much since our last Action Park episode. We've learned so much. We watched the HBO documentary. We're here to really hash it out yet again, given the new information, given the time. What was it, a year ago? A year and a half?
It was one of the episodes that really resonated with people, and we always kind of reference it.
Yeah.
And we always get stories and people connecting to it in some way.
Absolutely.
And I think amusement parks in general kind of do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this documentary, Class Action Park, it's on HBO Max, not sponsored.
Yeah. Don't go to HBO Go. Don't go to HBO Now. Go to HBO Max.
Don't go to HBO Gov. That's a separate one.
That's awful. .edu. Get out of here.
And we've even gotten some comments that, wow, you were kind of ahead of the curve on Action Park. And really, I'm sure, you know, they were developing the documentary, I'm sure, for years. But we did it just on the love of it, not knowing there was going to be a documentary.
Yeah. I think this is the first episode where this felt so like part and parcel to your upbringing. And I think Jason's from New Jersey. Like, you know, like, I don't think you didn't go there.
I did, I think, once when in the 80s when I was younger, but I didn't. I was too scared of rides. Yeah. And yeah. So, and I know there was another time I was supposed to go, and I know I said no to that because I think it was already in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and I was already in high school, and I just didn't want to. I just really didn't have any interest. I don't really love amusement parks anyway. I love them culturally, but I didn't really have a huge love for them. But, you know, and we'll get into the documentary, but the commercials were so part of my cultural existence, along with Cats on Broadway.
Yeah.
That was always a big one. So these commercials and Action Park, and they, you know, we'll get into it in the documentary, how they weren't always there. It was kind of like, hey, what was the thing that also like ramped things up? And it was these commercials that you were inundated with.
Absolutely.
And pretty much memorized them. And when you hear them now, and I hear them now, it's like, whoa, it's like, it's pretty much I had them memorized.
Yeah. Which is also crazy because I have again,
they were local commercials.
This is an East Coast thing that was so resonant for people of a certain time on the East Coast. And I'm not talking just like New Jersey, like when I bring this up, when I talk to people, when we used to, you know, socialize with other people, the amount of response to Action Park is nuts. Everyone of this age remembers this place, or at least the commercials, or had an experience, or has a story that's one of their friends went and again got injured. And that's a big thing with the documentary too.
I want to quickly mention our patreon.com/ghosttownpod, bonus episodes, advanced ad-free episodes. It really helps out the show. Just mentioning it really quick. Patreon.com/ghosttownpod. Right back into it.
Right back in. It was easy, painless, and we're back.
And when we put out the original episode, Action Park, the world's most dangerous amusement park, you can check that out. That has a ton of information. It has
absolutely
a bunch of sound bites, me and us asking other people their personal experiences. And what's great is that people have been volunteering their personal experiences. I'm going to talk about that a little later in the episode. But one of the directors and producers, Seth Porges, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, he contacted us on Twitter. He caught wind of it. This is a while ago. This is got to be pretty soon after we posted the episode. So it's been well over a year. And he's like, hey, I'm developing a documentary on it, which became Class Action Park. And the trailer has been advertised for a while. And we kind of talked about doing something in conjunction. I think the timeline's probably shifted as they do with things. They don't come out exactly when you want them to. Yeah. And this is now going to be that thing.
Yeah, this is it. This revisiting.
I want to support all the work that has been done on the documentary.
I have a lot of mixed feelings just based on other things I've consumed about it. My unfamiliarity with it, I think, also like puts me kind of at a disadvantage, but we'll get to that.
I had a little bit of when I was watching, I was like, I knew about a lot of the things just from doing that episode, just from then communicating with people. But what was great about this documentary is it wasn't just, let's talk about an insane amusement park. It wasn't just that. Gene Mulvihill, I'm saying that right. It's a lot of it is about him. Not all good.
No, I would say very every once in a while, someone's like, but he was a cool guy. We called him Uncle Gene.
Yeah.
He was like Wolf. He was Wolf of Wall Street. They say this in the documentary before, Wolf of Wall Street with the penny stocks, with this con, also with him conceptualizing the rides.
Yeah, he was definitely an innovator, but the cost was very high, and the way he went about things was really suspect. And then also which we touched on, but this documentary, and I'm glad they didn't. They could have easily kind of sidestepped it. The tragedy that happened. Yeah, there was one point where I was like getting kind of emotional.
It's hard to see, and I think this is a problem that I have with the documentary, with like tonally how it kind of, because they're going to talk about the creator. You're going to talk about how insane it was, the injuries, the deaths, kind of a natural heightening, but then it kind of undulates between these things, and it gets a little preachy for me at the end about a generation and about how you could do whatever you wanted at this park, and it was like the bastion of freedom. But that felt to me, especially with like Gene Mulvihill, where it's like the character of a man who creates something like that, and people would get injured and sue him, and he would take them to, like, think about kids getting injured. He would take them to court, so much so that lawyers wouldn't even want to try the cases because it was such a pain in the ass. That's the nature of the person who created this park. Yeah.
So why don't we'll start a little bit from the beginning and give you like a tiny lay of the land. You can always listen to the first episode we did on it, which is going to be different than this. It's not going to be the same, because we're going to be really touching on new stories that we've gotten and the documentary itself, which you should watch. Do not take our regurgitation of it. This is
not a recap.
No, this is more like a reaction to it, I suppose.
Reaction hash.
And we both watched it last night, so it's really fresh in our minds.
Yeah.
The park was open in 1978, and it was a ski lodge in Vernon, New Jersey. And, there's a lot of skiing in New York and upstate New York. And what do you do when it's like 98 degrees with 200% humidity?
Yeah.
It's pretty much useless.
Yeah.
And he was like, great. This guy, Gene Mulvihill, like you said, he was a Jordan Belfort.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it's amazing. When I say amazing, it's amazing, interesting, and culturally, not amazing like what a great guy.
No, he was a shark.
Yeah, he was a shark.
You know, he was a shark. He was an opportunist. They talk about the Playboy Club being up there too.
Another one of our episodes that we've had a tiny bit of controversy with, but the Playboy Club episode that we did is mentioned in this episode.
Yes.
So in a way, I think this podcast interest in what we're interested in really coincides with the people that are interested in something like Action Park or these places that used to really from a different time and kind of had different rules and not necessarily for the better.
Yeah. And also a different like class. They talk about it rivaling Orlando or trying to rival Orlando. And it's like, yes, but Orlando was still to get to Florida, which again, it was open year round. Florida's much warmer. You need to be at a certain economic level to make that trip, to have that experience. With Action Park, you don't need that. Like you can just be a kid whose divorced dad drops him off at the park and hopes to pick him up later that day.
And the car doesn't even stop. It just rolls out. And then beer cans fall out of the dad's car, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. And again,
probably.
you talk about the people that work there, which we kind of touched on, that it was kind of what the kind of how they kind of surmise a lot of things is this guy, Gene, was like, I'm going to give you, the 14-year-old in you, everything that you want. No rules. It's run by kids.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's dangerous. It's wild. A sign with rules, doesn't exist. It kind of like the park runs the park.
Yeah.
Which is
lawless.
To a kid sounds great. It's like, hey, you can go it's like Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Right? You go to this candy store, take as much as you want, eat as much as you want, and what's the price to pay? Nothing there really. It's just you get free candy. That's great. But for this, it's like you're kind of rolling the dice with your life.
Yeah. And talking about the shack that was the infirmary, and just the mixture of iodine and where they
I was thinking about that trying to get to sleep last night and trying to put myself, because I've when I chicken pox once. Oh, not chicken pox. Poison ivy on my hands, and I made a concoction like that because I was so it was so stupid. I wanted it off my hands because I used to get really bad poison ivy, and I sprayed that, and I just almost burnt the skin off my hands, and it is so painful. And I would do iodine, rubbing alcohol.
Yeah,
I didn't care. Like I would make these concoctions that would literally melt my toothbrush because some of it you'd spray it, and some of it would hit my toothbrush, and my toothbrush melted. So, just you think about things of you when you think about all the rules, like wearing a seatbelt now. I'll tell you, in the 1980s,
no, why?
Oh, you definitely, if you wore one in the back, you were pretty much a communist.
Yeah, exactly.
So they do discuss that time of, drinking out of a hose.
Yeah.
And there is a little bit of that. And they do kind of mention, hey, maybe in hindsight, that wasn't such a great thing. But I think it worked the way it worked because there's danger now. There's danger then. And maybe advantages were taken of back then that they don't so much now. But
but we're also close. Like I think when I think about parallels with negligence and corruption, how this whole park was insured by a fake insurance agent.
He made up his own.
He created. And that's not, they tell him right away. But again, in the spirit of that, of like, oh, we don't need anybody. Like it kind of does politically mirror a lot of things that are happening now. Where it's like, we don't need you. We can do it ourselves. We don't want any governmental control. That's exactly what this park was all about.
Yeah, so to the 14-year-old, this guy was great. And to the people with that entrepreneurial spirit. And it's just like, I don't think he was like, I hope people die, but he's like, I want people.
But he didn't give a fuck.
I want to make money.
Yeah.
I want people to have fun. I really do.
Yeah.
But I really want to maximize all of that. And I will not tolerate repercussions. And I think for somebody that doesn't want to have to answer to anybody, that must really, it's like watching a movie about somebody who doesn't play by the rules, like total renegade, like a renegade cop, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I love that. They don't, the red tape and the rule book, like throwing the rule book out the window is a very kind of attractive thing.
Sure.
But somebody has
until people die
and are injured.
You know, like you can't have fist fights going on in the middle of a Colorado River raft ride. Like you just can't.
And
do
one part
that.
is like, he's like, we need lifeguards to kind of like shuffle people. He's like, well, they don't have that in the Colorado River. He's like, this is not the Colorado River.
It's like, what are you talking about? And also like, I think part of what colors my conception of the owner of Action Park is people talk about him always being around. They talk about things not being supervised, but he was always around anyway. He was totally accepting of that, you know, just walking around they talk about like alcohol being everywhere, all these rides happening, just chaos all of the time. And the owner is walking around having a blast.
Probably looking to be like, hey, how can we fill this space with something dangerous, and how can I get the employees of this place to test it and wave $100 bill in front of them?
Oh my God. That part, the biggest detail that sticks in my mind is initially where they talk about him he mostly created all these rides, or the people that Disney wouldn't have, you know, or like people coming to him and he's like, yeah, I'll indulge this idea. Let's create it. He had his old like CEO fund it somehow, which again, we never got answers to where the money came from.
It was just a guy that was always able to drum up finances, and you know, this guy gets his at the end as well.
Totally. But the idea of like, let's create this loop, this water ride with a loop. Yeah. It goes all the way around. We're going to pay teenage kids who are broke to do this. Some people may lose consciousness. Some people may have a concussion. People would lose teeth in it, but that's not even the part that gets me. It's the part where people lost teeth in this ride, but then other people were going down the ride with lacerations on their body, cuts on their body. And they're like, where did the cuts come from? It's all, you know, pretty clean plastic. From the teeth that were embedded in the loop from the people who lost teeth who stayed there. And so the people coming down afterwards were getting cut by rogue teeth embedded in the ride.
A movie like Saw can't even conceptualize of that, because it's so indicative of how wild this place was.
Yeah. Talk about no rules.
A couple of things that kind of came up that I didn't realize is how Route 94 went right through the park.
Yeah. No problem. And also people would brag about taking the go-karts on Route 94, or people toppling over from slides. It's like, let's just put this liability right through your park. No problem. Have fun.
There was one, it was like this ball that had a bunch of wheels on it that would be on a track. Mm-hmm. But they'd build the tracks out of PVC pipe. And again, there's no, like you said, no engineers. Mm-hmm. No people are testing it scientifically. No. Oh, hey, this is pressure-treated metals or pressure-treated plastic. It's like PVC pipe. Yeah. And they don't know how it's going to react.
And there's when you say PVC pipe, I mean literal PVC pipe that you see in the footage of the rides.
And it would warp. Mm-hmm. And so the wheels and the tracks wouldn't align. And this kind of gyrosphere went off the track into the road onto the highway.
Awful.
Into a swamp.
Yeah. There's also like a snake-infested swamp. Like, it's like, what is the best scenario for a water park? Off the freeway in a snake-infested swamp in 100-degree heat, piloted by teenagers? Sure.
You know, the hills were naturally made because it was a ski resort, and they just retrofitted it with these like dangerous slides. And, it, you know, they kind of indicate that if you did it the way you were supposed to do it, theoretically you'd be fine. But the thing is that people like to take a running head start. Yeah. Or, you know, they like to belly flop on things, and the science isn't factored in. Mm-mm. And then from there, it's just like there's a very small window of where it's safe. Yeah. And when you tell a kid that do what you want, and then the people in charge are your age, no one's going to take you seriously. There's no authority figure, and there's no authority, and things are going to go awry, and then that's part of the fun, and then the legend is there.
Yeah, even if you did everything right on all of these rides, you were definitely going to get hurt. Like the idea of they were like toboggans that didn't have brakes, you know, like even if you did every single thing right, chances are you're probably going to get hurt.
We're all spending lots of time at home watching TV, making sourdough starters, doing some light math. Okay, maybe not so much the light math, but we have a lot more free time on our hands. And you know what they say about idle hands?
Here's an idea. Why not keep yourself occupied with some entertainment provided by my friends, your friends Adam and Eve? I've been a huge fan of them for years. They have thousands of unique product selections from vibrators to sexy toys to lube. Honestly, whatever your little at-home heart desires. As the folks at Adam and Eve say, the best part of staying at home is playing at home. I agree. And I know too, sex toys are expensive, but I'll say this. Take advantage of all of this delicious free time by choosing almost any one item at 50% off. When you buy from Adam and Eve, you'll also get 10 free boredom-busting gifts, including 6 spicy movies, a 3-piece bonus kit, free shipping delivered discreetly right to your door. I love it. Adam and Eve has thousands of products to sexify your life at home. Sexify? Is that a word? It is now. And you can shop for home with something, more fun than pants. Do you really need more pants? Where are you going? Shopping from home is great, but shopping for sex toys is even better. So don't spend another boring day at home without a new fun product from Adam and Eve's massive online collection. Go to adamandeve.com and use the offer code TOWN to bring home unlimited fun. That's ADAMEVE.com and use the offer code TOWN at checkout.
And then there's just, even if unless you have engineers in there and they're making everything, there's code and there's, a list of rules, things break down. When you have the weight of bodies of different shapes and sizes going down a thing, even best laid plans, you need to probably have some upkeep.
Yeah.
I doubt the upkeep was, it was either like, I guess we have to remove this ride for now. At best.
Yeah, at best. Even when someone died in the wave pool was still open. And, oh God, another detail where they said when they did have lifeguards, which again, were few and far between who are actually vigilantly doing their job, they would have them be at the wave pool. And they would rescue, 15, 20 people a day? A day! And they painted the bottom of it lighter so they could see the bodies to better access them.
And the problem was where the water was funneling with some of these rides, it was like runoff.
Yeah, it was like river runoff.
River runoff with suntan lotion, oil, right?
Feces.
And gore.
Yeah.
Literally use the word gore from open wounds.
Yeah.
Is just, and again, any kind of water park, you're going to get.
Yeah, I've lost some teeth in water park. Yeah. I'll admit it.
There's, people are just probably throwing up because it's
for sure,
and all of that is mixing in, like it becomes like
a viscous like sludge.
So you have that going in your mouth and eyes.
Yeah, of course.
I think about is our episode on Woodstock 99 a little bit when people were running around in the mud.
Yeah,
and that mud was runoff from the porta potties, and then also feces, throw up.
Yeah,
any kind of like disgusting thing that's out there, and you're just swimming in it.
Yeah.
And it's getting into your like mouth and eyes.
It's getting everywhere.
And, it's a water park, and can you swim? Maybe, but you find out that your body is not ready to acclimate to certain things because you're jumping into the
freezing runoff, like river runoff,
or it's not like water you're meant to swim in. It's kind of like whether it's like fresh water, so it's really cold, and your body is. I mean, I did a tough mudder once.
Yeah,
once and only once. And I did some pretty things that were pretty heinous, and pretty dangerous. And
don't they shock you in those?
Oh, yeah. I got electrocuted.
Oh, God.
I that was, I volunteered for that to do that. But I jumped off one of those things, and I remember getting to the top. And I the cliff diving thing, which is the most fun. And if I had a chance to chicken out, I would have. But then you have a Marine, I guess, screaming at you, jump maggot. He might have said that, but it was something like that. And I just jumped. And my body was not accustomed to it. I turned to be fine, but I saw other people popping out of the water and just blood pouring out of their noses because of the way you're hitting the water and the type of water. There's just so many factors that you can't account for all the time. So that's something I never would have done at Action Park. I did it now, and I kind of could. And I imagine if you have a bunch of 8-year-olds or 12-year-olds, a drunk adult,
of course,
people wanting to, they talked about people, everyone is screaming at you, calling you a pussy.
Yeah, if you don't do something. And the water too, very important. It was a river, it was fresh water. So not only do get that temperature thing that will fuck with your body in so many ways, but you don't get the buoyancy that's crucial for something like the wave pool to like keep you afloat. So you're going under in cold water, things are like bursting in your brain and body, and even then you aren't guaranteed to come back up.
And to kind of go back to, you think about the town, you know, it's in Vernon, and you know, you see it's like a nice kind of small, serene. I'm familiar with it as well because there's a town in New York, which is not exactly near where I live. It's called Warwick, which is, you know, it's at that kind of New York, New Jersey border where it is kind of on the top of the state. You know, it's a pretty small, green, nice town. You know, I know people think about New Jersey and they think everything's, you know, power plants and factories, and some of it is, but a lot of it is very lush and very
it's
green.
very lovely. They talk about it being a sleepy little town before people came and took it over.
And so this happens, and then you think, what are the, you know, how the town deals with it, but also it's bringing in jobs and revenue and essentially tourism. So that's a plus. But what is the price that's being paid? You know, people, you know.
The hospitals. I think this is a detail from our last episode about this, where the hospital had to buy another ambulance. Then eventually they had to be like, you get an ambulance.
Yeah, you have to get your own. It was, we can't handle, the volunteer ambulance department can't handle the volume of damage. So you need to get your own.
Yeah, and they weren't reporting all the injury. It's just, and they also showed footage, and I think the documentary was great for me because I got to see it and it like was brought to life of just people, normal people walking off a ride and like limping. Like no big deal. Just limping, just falling off a cliff into water, just
stepping on hot asphalt. They didn't think like, you know, what if people don't have shoes? It's a water park.
Yeah.
Let's have, again, a heat treated pavement. No, it was just straight up black tar asphalt that you're stepping on, just burning the bottoms of your feet. And then you're stepping into that gross water.
Ugh. Disgusting. It sounds disgusting.
And, you know, and I don't know if it's anyone listening to this, but you might be saying, it's like, yeah, but that's, you know, that's when you could just be a kid and not everyone was so coddled. It's like, science
people
and your body,
died. I'm sorry. Like people died. I would like to see people scarring, permanent scarring that has happened from this, concussions.
You know, blood disease, you know what I mean? Like blood diseases and things like that. And nobody's kind of taking that into account because what you're seeing is, even with this documentary or what we're talking about or the many articles that are out there, kind of what we're all doing is we're taking this very sensational place and, you know, kind of bringing it to the surface and then sensationalizing it more a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking, like, think clearly, think through. And I think the documentary did a pretty good job of kind of including, you know, the prices that, you know, that one might have to pay and what you're probably not hearing.
Yeah, I agree. I think, though, it's hard because for me, just not having grown up around there, not really being the person or the group demographic, I guess, that would go there, it felt very like, but we're also going to make this nostalgic for you, even though we're giving you these horrific stats. Like, I wish it kind of, like, Chris Gethard is like half the documentary, and I wish, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but like, you can let this speak for itself. It's already so much. It's already so poignant. It's already fascinating. Like, you don't really have to explain to me the cultural ramifications or the meaning, because I don't have that myself, and I can kind of like make my own assumptions about this place.
Yeah, I mean, he was in it a lot, and I liked what he had.
He was funny and fun.
Like, he said a lot of things but it didn't. I don't think it really gave it context unless he talked
and then you're
about,
cutting to a woman whose kid died, and you're like, okay, he's making a joke about this place. This guy died on it, so.
And you get that towards the end of the episode, and that was really tough.
Yeah, that was really hard. I mean, his mom is still so upset, as you might be. And I think you're thinking about these things, and I think our treatment of it last time, again, it's so hard to believe, it's almost comical, you know? But then this documentary really grounds it because people were hurt and died. So there's a lot of like tonal changes that happen in it.
It really does take you on a ride that I was not expecting.
Yeah.
And it really had like a lot of twists and turns, and I'm glad that it did that. But nostalgia, listen, I mean, we are in it right now. Like, you know, we're in nostalgia. This podcast leans very heavily on,
for sure,
on whether it's cultural history, a strange history, and nostalgia. And I think a lot of, television shows and movies are, do that now. And Action Park and this documentary is like, now is the perfect time for all that.
A blessing.
And the advertising and that, which when watching the documentary, things were going pretty well, but he was like, let's ramp it up with some commercials. And there were so many commercials.
Yeah.
And they just show unbridled fun. When it's snowing out, that looks like fun, but you don't feel tempted. But when it's hot and it's
hot, yeah.
And everyone's having fun and you're a boy, which is what I was, and you see girls, believe it or not, I know you're saying, yeah, right, dude. So you see girls and you're like, I was like, oh, I want to like have that community. There was just really something that spoke to that. And I'm just speaking for myself that I wanted to be. It's like when you watch commercials are meant to do that. Like you want to be this cool person or you want to be satisfied by this person. But if you watch like an 80s movie, like I did, and I still do.
The whole thing was an 80s movie.
And they really illustrate that in the documentary.
Yeah.
It's, it's like we talk about the culture of the mall.
Yes.
When it was at its height.
I mean, huge.
Huge. And this is the mall of fun.
This is Water Mall.
It's hot. It's fun. You don't see any adults. It's
there's no adults like killing your
arms.
buzz.
Yeah.
Like grab a beer.
Yeah.
Grab your girl.
Wait,
go
are you
jump.
at least 10?
Exactly. 6-year-old?
Hold up how many fingers you are in age.
Exactly. I don't care. Jump in that snake-infested pond water. It's your world, baby.
Yeah, don't worry about the snakes or the trout.
The dead trout.
And the adults had a place of their own because then, we talked about this. There was, the water world.
Yeah.
The movie Waterworld was probably a safer environment than this.
That's absolutely true.
Even in a post-apocalyptic
society. Still more sanitary.
But there was Motor World, which would be more adults.
Especially after 5 p.m., they said.
Yeah.
Where they would go.
The witching hour.
Yeah, exactly. Go get your buzz on. You don't have your wife on your back. You right next to I-94, just drive like you've never driven. Drive to forget.
Go to this beer garden.
Yeah.
And Gene would actually, he said when they have Anyfest, Oktoberfest.
Which, this is a part of it that I really liked. I was like, oh, they're bringing in like local businesses and like they took a brewery from Germany and like brought it in. Like, that's cool.
It makes it very authentic, but you would drink and then you're like, well, let me get on a ride, which would just
get on a motorboat.
A motorboat. And I like to think back, probably the psychology of it is when you're in this environment, it's like I don't know. It's like almost like nothing can go wrong in this environment because this is a business that's in business.
The perception of danger versus the actual danger. Like, this is a huge point that they really drove home for me. They're like, it's supposed to look dangerous. It's supposed to seem fun and exciting and dangerous. But this was that too.
Yeah.
Like that's not artifice. That's just what it is. So like adults, go drink all day in the beer garden and then go take a vehicle that may have gone up to 65 miles an hour out and just drive everywhere. Go for it.
They talked about how they had there's a governor of speed, and I don't know if they actually mentioned the tennis ball, but I believe when we talked about it in the last episode, they would just stick a tennis ball under something, and that would make the speed go as high as it possibly could go.
God.
Only after drinking. And I think, well, when did drinking and drive? I mean, it's always been terrible, but when did it become a thing where we said, "Oh, drinking and driving"? Probably the mid-ish 80s. Where you saw commercials, and I mean, obviously, now and in the last, 20, 30 years, but back then, drinking and driving, was that an issue like it is now? So you combine that, wearing a seatbelt, optional.
Optional, for sure.
I used to go, and I've probably mentioned this in this podcast, I used to go buy my mother cigarettes as a 9-year-old. They would sell it to me because I had it memorized, Virginia Slim Menthol Lights.
Oh my God.
I bought cigarettes for my mother from the age of 9 or 10.
Wow.
And there was no issue. Of course, I grew up in, part of New York, within a half hour of the, 45 minutes, hour of the city, probably 40 minutes away from this in the 80s. And it was like almost like you lived in this chaos.
Yeah.
We live in a different chaos now. But it was like this different chaos, or they're the same chaos, is just different. I don't know how to explain it, but it was really, this documentary is truly a time capsule where people would drink at this beer garden.
Yeah.
And like, let's get into a motorboat. And it's just really to cruise around.
Yeah, let's just cruise around for a while.
You can crash into each other, right? I mean,
yeah, of course.
Bumper cars are like that. And they just made these connections.
Of course.
Everything was like combative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, everything was like not just like nobody hit home any of the rules. So like, of course, if you're going to see something that looks like bumper cars, but it's in the water, you're going to treat it as such. You know?
I probably would too. And there's an inherent amount of like, do you want to bump into somebody? Too bad, because there's a backup and things get, waterlogged. And, you have somebody going, go. Yeah. Go. And I remember, because I've gone to some water parks, and it's
totally.
Like, and I was like, are you like counting off? Or are you just somebody just like spinning their whistle around?
Yeah. And that's the same thing. We had a big water park around where I grew up, Noah's Ark, and it was populated
by... Was it religious themed?
Yeah. That's Wisconsin though. Like, but it was safe. Like there was a lot of safety precautions because... Again, I could lose a tooth in it, but I probably wouldn't drown there, kind of a thing. But they had teenagers doing the go thing too. And even times we're at the most safe water park. Because at this point too, like heavily regulated, it was not that time an action park. You'd be like, I feel terrified of this. And also like you would like Whiplash City,
And all the while, Gene Mulvihill was really starting to become at odds with people in the town in lawsuits. And he just took this maverick, I guess, renegade stance where he's like, no. He's like, I won't show up. I won't pay for it. And whatever happens, happens.
The U.S. Marshal had to show up and like a teenager would just go to, I assume, the like cash machine in the office and like take care of his debts.
Yeah. It was, and I'm sure that kind of entrepreneurial spirit was appealing and attractive, but you said there was a lot of people that had to pay the price, and you have a bunch of kids that are just honestly it looks like a 80s movie.
Yeah, they had sleepover parties and then often would just go to work. They'd be like getting drunk, like having sex with each other, smoking a lot of weed, like whenever they wanted, wherever.
And I think it was because I really wasn't at the age then to really necessarily work there, where I worked for the New York State Parks, very close by, and I did maintenance. Like I, clean up. It's kind of like what some people do that on like some kind of community service or work release, but you got paid.
That's nice.
We drive around like on a, kind of like a go-kart or tractor. We pick up garbage. I would clean these New York State public bathrooms that people come in from the city. And how I would clean it, I would take a powder cleaning solution and I would throw it at the wall and toilet. And I took a high pressure hose.
Oh my God.
And just spray down these disgusting, noxious bathrooms. No masks, no gloves.
Yeah.
And I would just high pressure hose like shit and throw up and blood. And that's what I did for a job. And a friend of mine would always threaten to beat up the boss, always get fired, and always be back next year. So that was kind of and people would come in from New York City, start fights with us. It was a very dangerous. I mean, we had like dangerous combustible stuff, like gasoline.
Wow.
And we just rode around, and it was probably like I'd say more late 80s. Like we're talking about like 88, 89. So, I mean, I'm really surprised I didn't work at Action Park, but it was that similar thing. And it was just a bunch of kids with dangerous equipment, like landscaping, and we would just kind of sort of do whatever. And like the people in charge, we'd just be like, we would literally say, I was like, come on, don't be like that. They would yell at us and fire us, but we'd always just show back up.
I mean, that speaks to that time though. Like you lived it in a different way and hopefully like a less dangerous way, but still it's just like chemicals, no problem. Rules, nah, not for us. Anything goes. And I would love to, they interviewed a lot of people, a lot of then teenagers, now adults who worked there, but I would love to know like any reoccurring things that they have from working there around like all of that shit and just, also like what stories. I'm sure that they didn't share a lot of stories.
I wonder if I'm hoping that perhaps there's some bonus footage and come up and
be like Netflix and like drop it in some Dropbox somewhere so we can feast upon it, please.
And kind of as we're kind of like winding this up, I mean, we've hit like a lot of the different points. the documentary, like towards the end, they kind of focus on one of the deaths, and it is incredibly sad.
Brutal.
For everything
brutal.
that we're talking about now, and might seem kind of cavalier. It was just, I actually started like tearing up, and because I think it's, one, because it was very sad.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting it. And, the mother of one of the kids, and this has been like now 30 plus years.
It is still such a hard, raw place for her. And I think that was really hard for me too. And when she said she celebrated when he died.
She's never celebrated.
Yeah. She's like, got a bottle of red and celebrated. Like, it's like, this is still an open wound for her. Yeah. This is not
she mentions
scabbed over with a weird burning concoction.
Walking, I think, finding out and leaving the hospital and walking onto the highway.
Yeah.
It's all, there's all highways and stuff, and her husband having to pull her back, and how sad the brother was. He got married like 4 days later. And he's like,
I can't believe he still got married, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there was probably
book a venue.
Right. I think there's a sense of like probably like the shock and everything is like, listen, let's just kind of like move forward and use it as a celebration. I don't know. I can't like get in the head.
Exactly. It was so emotionally charged for me too in so many ways. And again, the fact that I think when you see people, as we do, and especially, we've covered unsolved mysteries, when you see people talk about death, there is kind of this like facade, this like TV kind of precipice where you're like, okay, this is for TV and I'm seeing this.
It's entertainment.
Yeah, there's a layer of this is entertainment. And I think with this, it still felt so painful and raw, and you really didn't get that kind of resolution or polish that you get with a lot of people talking about death in documentaries.
I don't want to end it on a too sad of a note.
I don't want to do that either.
But I have some little testimonials I got from our YouTube on our Ghost Town podcast.
Amazing.
YouTube. And, I want to include some of the people's, kind of feedback. Real life experiences. Suzette says, thanks for posting. I remember riding the luge, no helmet, hitting the cement wall, seriously bruising my legs while grabbing on for dear life that little steering stick to slow it down. I think he's talking about the Alpine slide.
Yeah.
And
steering stick's mostly broken.
Second time I ended up off the track and kind of just dragging herself down. Somebody said, you beat HBO Max to it. Good job. That wasn't really the point. Somebody said, great listen. I grew up within the shadows of Action Park. It was one of those places where if someone said some far-fetched story, you believed it because of what that park was. We used to say, if you didn't get hurt, you didn't go. At the end, Action Park cost $15 for kids and between 17 and 28.
Finally, a price. Adults. This is something that I wanted to hear since we did this a year and a half ago. How much did it cost?
And that's towards the end. So you close in 96, then reopen in 98, and then they changed the name to Mountain Park Creek.
Oh boy.
Probably back in the 80s. And when I'm talking about it, I'm talking like 78 to 88 mostly for me. But you saw Ricky Rackman from MTV Headbangers Ball, which I thought was really sad. And you see Lane Stanley from Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
That's 93, and he died like I think 2 years later.
God.
So I wasn't aware. And that's after my kind of purview of Action Park is the early 90s. We went every year. My brother lost a lot of skin on the Alpine slide. The track got so hot, it melted his skin and he crashed.
Oh. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
A time capsule. A horrifying, bleeding cesspool of a time capsule for $10 you could enjoy.
Yeah. And now what do you get for $10? I didn't get like a smoothie?
Not even menthols.